Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael. This presentation, we do not intend for it to be long. We do, brothers and sisters, do know and understand that recently online there has been a matter discussed regarding the terminology and the understanding of saying a law of Moses. While many people do know and acknowledge themselves as Israel, there is sadly a disagreement on the concept of the usage and the acceptance of the said New Testament. For those who do know and understand, I am what you will call an Old Testament-based brother. In this particular teaching, brothers and sisters, in this particular presentation, is going to be about the matter of, in part, why we are said to be Old Testament-based. All right? This is a 15 PowerPoint presentation. All right? So I'm asking, please get your pens, your pencils, and let us get into the subject matter. Shalom. The matter of the priest in part. Shalom. Giving honor to the Creator of heaven and earth. This presentation will focus on the matter of the priesthood of ancient Israel. Shalom. The matter of the Levites, priests in Zadok. Shalom. We want to point out that the priests of ancient Israel were from the tribe of the Levites. In Exodus 29, we see that they were anointed. This means in today's terms, the priests were messiahs / anointed ones. Shout out to the sister Sarah Michaela Yisrael, Shalom Queen. The future priests of the Israelites will come from the tribe of Levi as well. In Ezekiel 43, we see sorry about that. In Ezekiel 43, we see in the future the seed of Zadok will be from where the priest will come from. Zadok mentioned in Ezekiel is the person who anointed Solomon as king in 1 Kings chapter 1. So, brothers and sisters, we already begin to see and know that there was already an established order regarding, say, the priesthood. All right. Now, the reason why in spirit wanted to get into this particular subject is because somebody thought it would be a good idea in trying to insult or bash Old Testament-based Israelites by saying when Moses, who was a Levite, was asking the Most High to set someone over the congregation, that Joshua was chosen. And why was Joshua chosen and not Aaron? Now, this is no disrespect, and I didn't screenshot or will copy and paste what the person stated. But in a nutshell, what the presentation of that statement was supposed to have been was the Levites were not the ones to be selected and that it would come from the tribe of Judah, but not realizing that Joshua, the successor of Moses, was not from the tribe of Judah. See, Caleb was from the tribe of Judah, who was an assistant to Joshua. So Moses' successor was Joshua. See, the thing is, in going over this and trying to bash the Old Testament Israelites or the Israelites that are Old Testament based, what has happened is some not understanding the stance of the Old Testament wound up trying to make a point by not understanding the Old Testament itself. And this is something that we want to point out for reasonable purposes. There is a timeline of the biblical matter. Ezekiel's prophecies from Ezekiel 35 on did not happen yet. Ezekiel, the 35th chapter, brothers and sisters, as well as chapter 36, speaks about the children of the Edomites. All right? And what happened in that particular case. The portion of Ezekiel 37, brothers and sisters, speaks about the nation of Israel coming back to being in their own land. That has not happened yet. Ezekiel 38 and Ezekiel 39 speaks about the Israelite nation going against the European nations in war. That has not happened yet. So we just cannot sit there and I say this in no disrespect, just attempt to talk about the scriptures and not get into the prophecies and the matters that happen regarding the nation of Israel and that will happen regarding the nation of Israel. Let's go on and continue, brothers and sisters. Numbers 3, in the matter of the priests. And Yah spoke unto Moses, saying, and I, behold, I have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel, instead of all of the firstborn that openeth the matrix among the children of Israel. Therefore the Levites shall be mine. So one of the things to point out in that particular case, brothers and sisters, is that the Levites were taken to be the priests instead of the firstborn of the house of Israel. So when you read of the priests in Exodus chapter 19, that right there in that particular case is talking about the firstborn. But it seems as though the Levitical priesthood, it seemed to be as if treated as if it didn't matter or will not matter. And that's what we want to point out in this particular case out in here. Next slide. 1 Kings 12, in the matter of the fake priests. Now this is talking about Jeroboam, the king of Israel. And he made a house of high places and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like the feast that is in Judah. And he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing upon the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. So brothers and sisters, looking at it in this particular case, it says Jeroboam made priests that were not of the sons of the Levites. So why do we want to point this out is because the priest and the priesthood that we already spoke about in Ezekiel will be from the line of Zadok, which come from the house of Levi. So anyone else doing the priest matters in the future of Israel that is not of that particular line Ezekiel spoke about is to be disqualified. And brothers and sisters, when you get into the book of Ezra in your own time, Ezra, the 2nd chapter, is where the people had to show their pedigree about the matter of them being of the house of the Levites. So this is not something to be treated lightly or anything in that particular case. These are things, brothers and sisters, we want to point out. All right. So let us continue on in this particular case. Thank you. Explanation in the matter with Zadok. While this is in no way a bash against what some Israelites understand and believe, we want to point out some things. Zadok, the one mentioned in the Old Testament, is never mentioned in the New Testament. All right, so now Zadok you read of in the book of Kings, who anointed Solomon. And then you see about him later on spoken of in the book of Ezekiel. Brothers and sisters, this same Zadok that you see there is not mentioned in the New Testament. So now, with the house of Aaron being from where Zadok comes from out of the line of Eleazar, who was the son of Aaron. And his future line according to Ezekiel, as we pointed out, will be the priest the priest in Israel to come. So it's a temporary hold, brothers and sisters, if we will, on the matter of Ezekiel's prophecy and what will be concerning the priesthood in that particular matter. It's not a permanent hold. It's not something, brothers and sisters, that will be perpetual forever, as if the Levitical priesthood means nothing. But in order, in many cases, for other doctrines to come to being, Levi couldn't be praised in that manner. The house of the Levites cannot have their full stance, brothers and sisters, with the ways of the world that was coming in with the Greeks and the Romans. Because if you remember good and well, that Antiochus Epiphanes, who was of the Greeks, all right, that you read of in the book of the Maccabees, his thing was to stop the sacrifices. He wanted to cut off the works of the Levites. So it would stand to figure, knowing that that was already implemented by Antiochus Epiphanes, and then it was also later on implemented by Domitian of Rome, who was the successor of Titus in Israel. You would begin to sit there and see where that ruach or that spirit come from to try to diminish and minimalize the portion and a position of the Levites, who were the priests of ancient Israel. You understand? So these are things that we want to point out for edification purposes. All right? Next slide, please. The matter with Hebrews 7 and the priest. Now, this Hebrews 7 is cited in the aspect from the New Testament. Let's see why, in part, no disrespect intended, why we're saying what we're saying. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all. First, being by interpretation king of righteousness, and after that also king of Salem, which is king of peace, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither the beginning of days nor the end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually. Now consider how great this man was, unto whom even a patriarch Abraham gave a tenth of the spoils. And verily, they that are of the sons of Levi, who receiveth the office of the priesthood, have a commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law, that is, of their brethren, though they come out of the loins of Abraham. But he who is descent is not counted from them received tithes of Abraham, and blessed him that had the promises. Verse 8, and here men that die receive tithes, but there he receiveth them, of whom it is witness that he liveth. And as I may say, Levi also, who receiveth tithes, paid tithes in Abraham, for he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. If therefore perfection were by the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need was there for another priest should rise after the order of Melchizedek, and not be called after the order of Aaron? For the priesthood being changed, there is made a necessity a change also of the law. For he of whom these things are spoken pertaineth to another tribe, of which no man gave attendance at the altar. For it is evident that our Lord sprang out of Judah, of which tribe Moses spoke nothing concerning priesthood. Now, what we just read there is in the New Testament in Hebrews chapter 7, verse 1 to 14. Right, now let's first off, again, this is why I stated in the beginning of this, I am an Old Testament based brother. And I wanted to show from the Torah, from Numbers, from Ezekiel, from the Tanakh itself, the stance before we begin to speak upon the subject. Melchizedek that you see of by many accounts was Shem, the son of Noah, in many, many cases. that Noah taught his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the ways of the Most High. And that it was mainly Shem that stayed on the path of the ways of the Most High. If, for instance, that Shem is Melchizedek that we see in the book of Genesis, that means that he did have a person from whom he came from. Shem did have a dad. Now, in Hebrews 7 verse 5, it says, and verily they that are of the sons of Levi, who received the office of the priesthood, having a commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law, that is of their brethren, though they come out of the loins of Abraham. Now, you read about the Levites taking a tithe in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 18. Deuteronomy 18 is where you read that, as well as the book of Numbers chapter 18. So these are things that we just want to point out for reason purposes. The other matter, it says here in Hebrews 7 verse 12, for the priesthood being changed, there is made of necessity a change also of the law. Now we know good and well, Deuteronomy chapter 4 is where it says, you shall not add unto the word, nor take away from it. So there was no change in the law in this particular case. All right. So these are things that we're attempting to show and point out, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. Now, while stating as reason as to why we are Old Testament based, which we repudiate the terminology Old Testament. The said Old Testament didn't call itself an Old Testament. Mostly over 90% of the Israelites came to an understanding of Israel in reading Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, is in the said Old Testament. Hebrews 7 and Ezekiel 43. For the priesthood being changed, there is made of necessity a change also of the law. Now, let's see what Ezekiel 43 says. And he said unto me, Son of man, thus saith the Lord God, these are the ordinances of the altar, and the day when they shall make it, to offer burnt offerings thereon, and to sprinkle blood thereon. And thou shalt give to the priests, the Levites, that be of the seed of Zadok, which approach unto me, to minister unto me, saith the Lord God, a young bullock for a sin offering. All right, there are Israelites that are teaching online that the sacrificial offerings that we see in the said Old Testament are done away with. There are a couple of things to be stated concerning that. In the New Testament, it starts off with the genealogy of Yeshua or Yahshua. All right, this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. It says Yeshua, who is called Mashiach, or for the English, Jesus, who is called Christ. If Yeshua in the New Testament was or is a Messiah, there is no way understanding said Old Testament thought that he was to be a sacrifice also. In the said Old Testament, in the book of Psalms 105, it says, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. So there's no way that you're going to have an anointed one to be your sacrifice as well, and it be justified, said in the Old Testament understanding. Now, while some may be listening, already knowing a brother's Old Testament based, or so forth and so on, and some may agree and some may disagree, everything that's pointed out is directly cited from the book or the Bible itself. We just have to know and understand, brothers and sisters, the aspect of what happens with the said Old Testament and what happened with the said New Testament, if we will. The prophecies of Ezekiel that we've read here have not come to pass yet. So in the future, we do see that there will be a matter of a thing called for a sin offering. So there will be sin offerings in the future. I've noticed, in due respect, I say this. Pardon. One of the serious debates that is presented to said Old Testament-based brothers and sisters is, well, what do you do when you sin? While at the same token, we say we are in captivity for our sins. What has happened is some have taken Christian principles and used it into Israelite understanding, just as much as some have taken Judaic principles and then brought it into Israelite understanding. Then want to sit there and use Talmudic / Judaic understanding and principles, such as lighting candles pre-Shabbat and everything like that, or lighting candles before the Sabbath and having that a debate, or debating on whether or not one should name their children before the patriarch Abraham and so forth, or have a concept of wanting to say the things in the fringes must be added up to 613 and things that are not prescribed in the Torah itself. You understand? These are things that we need to know how to sit there and, okay, when Israel comes to the understanding of ourselves, what was given to us from the Most High and what was adopted along later on. That's something to be pointed out, because to say that the Judaic books, such as, be it from the Mishnaic part of the Talmud or the writings of Paul, we have to begin to know and see where the distinction comes into play. And the Torah itself is the only book that can promise what it can promise. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. None of these other doctrines can come close to even offering a blessing like that which is given in the Torah itself. So we want to be circumspect on what we accept. Do we accept something that has a bag with holes in it, O house of Israel, as Jeremiah spoke about? Or do we have the fountain of living waters, the word of the Most High itself? Next slide, please. The law of Moses. Moses commanded us a law, even the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob, Deuteronomy 33, verse 4. And keep the charge of the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes and his commandments and his judgments and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest, and whithersoever thou turnest thyself. Yea, or 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 3. Yea, or Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him. Daniel 9, verse 11. Brothers and sisters, the portions that we read here come from Deuteronomy, 1 Kings, and Daniel. The point in that is there's another, I wouldn't call it battle per se, but a matter of saying, is it the law of Moses or the law of Yah? And that's why we have to, in all our getting, get understanding. Next slide, please. The law of Moses. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that you shall do so in the land whether you go to possess it. Deuteronomy 4, verse 5. And the Lord said unto Moses, come up to me into the mount and be there, and I will give thee the tables of stone and the law and the commandment which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. Exodus 24, verse 12. Brothers and sisters, the law of Moses, as we read in 1 Kings 2, verse 3, David knew that the law of Moses came from the Most High. What some people who want to bash the Old Testament, if you will, by first even calling it Old Testament, want to say is that Moses made up laws. Some Israelites who are vegetarians or vegans say this about Leviticus chapter 11. Some people say this who are saying that Moses, for the hardness of the Israelites' heart, permitted them to divorce. This is why we wanted to read what the book itself says, because it says, "Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me." So, brothers and sisters, going from there and then going to Exodus chapter 24, where the Most High tells Moses, "Come up to me into the mount and be there, and I will give thee the tables of stone and the law and the commandment." So the commandments that Moses gave the people were from the Most High. So that's something we want to point out in this particular case. Let's go on and close out. "And Yah spoke unto Aaron, saying, Do not drink wine nor strong drink, thou nor thy sons with thee. When thou go into the tabernacle of the congregation, Mishidah, it shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. And that ye may put difference between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean. And that ye may teach the children of Israel the statutes which the Lord has spoken unto them by the hand of Moses." So when we read about by the hand of Moses, when we read about the priests that were to write the law and the king that was to write a copy of the law, we know that this law called the law of Moses, or the Torah to Moshe, brothers and sisters, is the laws that Moses got from the Most High. David knew that in what he was saying. Daniel knew that in what he was saying as well. So let's continue in this particular case. Leviticus and Malachi. "For I am Yah, I am the Lord that bringeth you up out of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy." Leviticus 11, verse 45. "And ye shall be holy unto me, for I, the Lord, am holy, and have severed you from other people, that you shall be mine." Leviticus chapter 20, verse 26. "Remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded him in Israel." "Remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel, with statutes and judgments." Malachi 4, verse 4. So Malachi, being one of the later prophets of the said Old Testament, one of the things he was noted for saying is to remember the law of Moses. Daniel spoke about the law of Moses. David, before that, spoke about the law of Moses. We read in the Torah itself about Moses being taught the commandments to give to the children of Israel. So this is what we were talking about earlier when we was talking about there was a timeline and a matter within the scriptures itself. Let's go on, if we will. Hebrew and some understanding. This word you see here, we're going to highlight this, if we will, right? Yara, which means to cast or to shoot. And the word here, hora, highlighted here in the green. When put in the heat field becomes hora. So we want to color code this the same. The word hora, seen near highlighted in the green, means to teach. The word yara, brothers and sisters, shown near in the yellow, means to cast or to shoot. And then we have here, we're just going to underline this. The word Torah as we see here, right, means what? Instruction or teaching. So from the word yara, you get hora, and then you get the word Torah. The word Torah comes from the root word hora, which means to teach or to instruct. So the Torah itself is any aspect of noun, a thing, a teaching, an instruction. Its roots in verb, brothers and sisters, all right, is the word hora. Why do we want to point that out? Because when discussing this kind of matter, I've noticed something. That some brothers and sisters will never admit or say, I'm going to go back and check that out. I'm going to go and research that. I'm going to examine the matter and then get back to you. What happens in some cases is this person doesn't have the spirit. And when you can hear a statement such as, brothers and sisters, you don't have the spirit. There are different kinds of spirits. What spirit are you saying one doesn't have? There's the lying spirit that was in the prophets of Ahab in the book of Chronicles. There's the jealous spirit that the book of Numbers chapter 6 talks about. There's the spirit of discernment as well. When you go into the book of Isaiah 11, it speaks about the spirit of knowledge and the spirit of understanding. So in light of that, knowing that it says an evil spirit of the Most High came upon Saul, and everything that David was about, Saul basically tried to be against. There are different spirits in this earth. So we have to be cognizant when we're saying a person doesn't have, quote, the spirit, when we know good and well that there are different spirits in this earth. All right. Next slide, please. Proverbs 1 and Jeremiah 31. Hear, my son, the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the teaching of thy mother. Shema beni musar abika, wa al titos torat imeaka. Now, if we highlight this part here, Torat, the teaching of your mother. That's in Proverbs chapter 1. So we know that Torat means teaching of. It comes from the word Torah, which comes from the word Hora, which comes from the root word Yara. So these are things, yes, that we do want to point out for evidence purposes. Jeremiah 31 in closing out. Thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon. And the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the rays thereof roar. Yahzeba'ot is his name, the Lord of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Most High, saith Yah, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus saith Yah, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith the Most High. So if the heavens above can be measured and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, what do you think NASA's about? What do you think some of these people, when they go into mining into the earth, about? They know they got the promise from the Most High that if they're able to measure that the Most High will cease from being a nation before Yah. The doctrines that have spilt into Israel, from the doctrine of Paul in the New Testament to the doctrine of the rabbinic sages, can never prove, like Jeremiah can talk about, by saying one, for instance, thus saith Yah. You don't find that in the Talmud. You don't find that in the writings of Paul. Ko amar Yah, thus saith Yah. You do not see that in there. Who giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the rays thereof roar. Yah Zebaoth is his name. The Lord of hosts is his name. Those are ordinances, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the sea. All of them work under the ordinance of the Most High. So, brothers and sisters, what has happened is, as it says, like the prophecy in the book of Amos. You understand? Amos chapter 8. When it says, there shall be for a famine, but not a famine of food, but of the hearing of the word of the Most High. And they shall wander from the north even unto the west, to seek the word of Yah, and shall not find it. So Amos chapter 8, verse 11, saying there shall be a famine of the word of Yah. One of the greatest ways they did it was by calling his word the Old Testament. And running to the north is where Christianity came from the focal point of the land of Israel. And running to the east is where Islam came from the focal point of the land of Israel. So by running to these other ideologies and doctrines, while calling the book that the Most High spoke in old, there you have it. Daniel chapter 8, it says that when the Greeks came in, they cast the truth down to the ground. The truth in the scriptures is the Torah itself, because when you go to the book of Psalms 119, it says the law, thy Torah, is the truth. So by casting it down, calling it old, we don't have to do it. We don't have to keep what's, quote, the laws of Moses no more. That's Old Testament. Then from the Greeks, you get the Romans. From the Romans comes Christianity. Not long after the matter with Justinian, you have Muhammad coming along with Islam, and the people running all over trying to find, having already denounced in their own way the laws of the Most High. So these are things we want to point out for edification purposes. It is a disrespect to call it the Old Testament. Who gave you the permission to call an Israelite brother or sister, oh, you're non-messianic? Who gave you that right to denounce your brother or sister? Because you can't pick your brother or sister. Who allowed you to call yourself anointed or following said anointed and other ones are not? When come right down into it, the concept of a Mashiach is an Old Testament concept. The concept of a Messiah is Old Testament, if you will. What has happened, as pointed out, is you don't hear Ko Amar Yah. So you begin to have other doctrines that came along later on. That is why one of the hottest debates on Facebook, Meta, whatever they call it, currently, and this is why in part I wanted to do this presentation, is about the matter of divorce. While I am, not to get too personal, getting closer in relationship with my lady, much shout out to the sister Sarah Michaela. In Israel in general online, there is a big issue of whether or not Moses, for the stubbornness of your heart, allowed you to divorce your wives. But, quote, from the beginning, it wasn't so. One of the things in Deuteronomy 24, it speaks about the matter of divorce. There are some, and this is no disrespect intended, who feel that Old Testament-based relationships between men and women don't work because they don't have, quote, the blood of said Yeshua. Did you know that? See, I'm related to Messianic brothers and sisters, and I have friends who are. And what I'm saying is no disrespect intended whatsoever, if we will. Deep down, some feel we got to teach these Old Testament Israelites relationships because their things don't work. Keeping it 100, that's how the ideology comes out in many, many cases. You understand? So in the New Testament, it says if you marry her who is divorced, you have committed adultery. But that's not accurate. Adultery is already defined in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10, and brothers and sisters, in Leviticus chapter 18, verse 20. Adultery is when a man, be he married or not, has relations carnally with a woman that is married. That is what adultery is, brothers and sisters. You understand? So to say that Moses gave people the matter of divorce, then say at the same token, if you believed in Moses, you will believe in me. And speaking in regards what's said in the New Testament, it doesn't go according to such. Divorce is something that wasn't always praised, but neither was it always praised about slaying the wicked. But what did the Most High say? That if you afflict the widow, that the Most High will smite you with his sword. That's in Exodus. So the Torah talks about sad realities. It talks about how the Most High deals with men who don't treat his daughters right. It talks about what happens in a matter of a said divorce. Because when you're dealing with Israel, you're dealing with a people. When dealing with a people, you're going to deal with sad realities. And sometimes, in certain cases, marriages don't work. Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter, it says, if the man gives her a bill of divorcement, she may become another man's wife. That is the laws of the Most High. That's why in the beginning of this, I spoke upon saying the law of Moses, and Moses saying that he taught the people what he was taught when you go to Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 5. You understand? So, pointed out, and not to be redundant, divorce, though it's not always praised, and though it is a last option in many cases when a marriage doesn't work, it also in the Torah talks about slaying the wicked. We know that the heart of the Most High, he rather the wicked change from their way and not die. But sometimes the wicked refuses to change, and that is a sad reality in that particular case. So these are things we want to point out for edification purposes. What the Torah says, nowhere in there does it say that because of the hardness of your heart, I, Moses, give you divorce. No disrespect intended. In the New Testament, in Corinthians, Paul says, I, Paul, say unto you, not by commandments. Moses didn't say stuff such as, I, Moses, say to you, not by commandment. And again, the Torah, which is in the said Old Testament, is the book that can only promise what it can promise, such as health, wealth, understanding, and protection. No other doctrine from the writings of Paul to the Mishnaic writings and their arguments about stuff to the Quran to the other doctrines of other peoples. None of them can promise like the Torah can. None of them can lay it down by saying, I will cause your days to be fulfilled and there will be none barren among you, neither shall any miscarry. That is in Leviticus or Exodus. Only the Most High could promise that. In Deuteronomy, the 30th chapter, it says that the Most High will make Israel better than their forefathers. The doctrines of these other nations cannot make the promises that the said Old Testament can. So we have to ask ourselves, as it asks in the Old Testament, do we get a bag with holes in it in doctrine? Or do we sit there and go back to the fountain of living waters, the Most High? So what is asked by said, or what is asked to said Old Testament Israelites is, well, how do you return back to Yah? How do you do it? It tells you in Isaiah, cease to do evil, learn to do well. And it's not to be arrogant. It can't happen. The brother you hearing speaking was a klepto. I was what the Hebrew will call a ganab, a thief. I no longer steal. I don't steal no more. Couldn't say that some years ago. Taking this is mine. Taking that, that's mine. It's not yours. You didn't pay for that. I don't go about life like that no more. So it can't happen. Where it says, cease to do evil, learn to do well. It's better to get overtime at the job than to try to sit there and go with a bag like the store has and put things in there when nobody's looking. That's not the ways of Israel. The sons of Israel are not supposed to do things like that. That's not upright. That's why when the goblet was found in Benjamin's sack, they were like, what is this? This is not how we get down. We don't go into anyone's establishment and walk out with something that we did not have previously without purchase and permission. Let's go on to the next slide and close out. The book on why we are Old Testament based. This book here is available on Amazon. Though many would disagree with the content of it, it was essential to bring out to the people. I can be reached at 908-587-4841. And with that, giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. I want to, on a human level, give a shout out to my lady, Sarah Michaela Israel, and to the other people I see in the chat here, Yehuda Yasharal, Awaken Greatness with Prince David, and anyone else at the sound of one voice. I was listening to the people in the congregation, Sha'arei Shemayim, and giving a shout out to Nasi Keshkiyahu or Prince Ezekiel, who teaches there. And he said something, and I want to say this in closing out, repeating what he stated. Shout out to Liberation Tabernacle of Yah. What the man, Nasi, the one who runs the congregation, Sha'arei Shemayim, stated, is the Most High may give somebody a spanking, and it is still our duty to help our brother and sister. This is not to get too personal or anything like that. Recently in New York, there was a big fire, and not to expose one's business, I want to give a shout out to my lady who took her own time to go and assist with the people and helping recovery and so forth and so on. In Leviticus, it says, you shall not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. Being able to be of assistance is what we are supposed to do. Is Israel, whether you know yourself as Israel or not, whether they know themselves as Israel or not. It is not for us to speculate and be presumptuous to say, well, that happened to them. It must have been for a reason. Israel doesn't deal with presumptuous ways. We have prophets in our culture, not people who, after a thing happens, sit there and try to speculate a matter and try to reason out a matter afterward. No. Our Lord teaches us to help out our brothers and sisters. So to the people who went on those missions and continue to do so, may the Most High bless you. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. Shalom.